Thank you, Will. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Welcome to Inventors Invent, 3 new takes on assistive technology. Now, inventors have long been inspired to apply their genius to helping blind people. Think of innovators in recent years like Mike Shebanek, who invented Voiceover at Apple, or Jim Fruchterman, who worked so hard to deliver Bookshare from Benetech. And those are just 2 people. There are many of them. Today, innovators have a nearly miraculous array of affordable technologies to work with, including LIDAR and computer vision and high-speed data networks and much more. In this session, we're going to talk to 3 of turning those core technologies into remarkable new tools for people who are blind or visually impaired. So it's with a great deal of respect and admiration that I'm happy to introduce our panel of creators. So we have 3 gentlemen today. First is Cagri Hakan Zaman. He's the co-founder of Mediate, an innovation lab based in Boston, which is the creator of the SuperSense app for the visually impaired and blind. Cagri is an expert in spatial computing intelligence who aspires to create AI systems that enable and empower individuals in physical and digital spaces. Prior to establishing Mediate, Cagri completed his PhD at MIT, and his dissertation was Spatial Experience in Humans and Machines, which offered an investigation into the computational aspects of human spatial perception and reasoning, with the aim of developing spatially aware machines. Louis-Philippe Massé is the Director of Product Management at HumanWare. Dr. Massé has a doctorate in physics. He worked for more than 20 years in the industries of fiber optics, 2D and 3D sensor design, as well as in product development in the field of metrology and product inspection. He started at HumanWare as the Director of Product Management. He's currently Vice President of Product Innovation and Technologies, where he is responsible for product management, development, as well as soon he is overseeing the launch of Stellar Trek, which is what we're going to talk about today. Finally, Kershaw De Lan. Kürşat was born in 1986, and he was born blind. Kürşat studied psychological counseling in university, and during his years in university, he was selected to attend the YGA leadership program as one of 50 people out of 50,000 applicants. He volunteered on projects for the socioeconomic development of the visually impaired, and after his graduation, he started work at Roche in Istanbul. During this time, he was producing and hosting a Turkish award-winning radio show called Exploration of Senses that are suppressed by sight. Kürşat won many awards for his WeWALK cane project, where he is co-founder, and we're going to talk about WeWALK today. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to begin with Kürşat. We're going to just quickly step through some of the product features associated, which is a cane and it's an app. And perhaps you could give us the very quick rundown on what the WeWALK project is all about and how it helps people who need assistance.
So WeWALK is the smart cane developed for the visually impaired people, and it alerts visually impaired user through haptic feedback about upper body obstacles such as trees and poles, and gives turn-by-turn navigation, informs about restaurants, cafes, stores while I'm passing by. The most importantly, it gains new features by integrating with cutting-edge smart city solutions. And so this is my WeWALK chain, and you can see the obstacle detection sensor here, and it has a touchpad here, and also it has a microphone, speaker. Also, it has gyroscope, accelerometer, compass in itself. So visually impaired people, while they are walking, they can on WeWALK's voice menu by swiping through touchpad.
I see. Kürşat, does it work independently of an app, or does it require an app to work along with it?
Actually, both of them. So you can keep using it as a standalone device, and you can get benefits from its obstacle detection feature. But when you pair with your smartphone through Bluetooth module, you can reach navigation and other smart features of WeWALK.
I see. And what are the key technologies involved in the cane? What technologies are you using to deliver these features?
I think most importantly, we use IMU sensors, so which help us to provide more accurate navigation experience to visually impaired people. As you are walking on the street, the navigation technologies makes our lives really easier, but we have to hold our smartphone always. So it means our two hands are occupied. Holding smartphone, and it's a distractive situation. So thanks to WeWALK's inbuilt sensors, so we can put into our pockets our smartphones, and then I can keep getting navigation through WeWALK's touchpad, and we provide more accurate navigation experience thanks to WeWALK's inbuilt sensors.
Right. So you're detecting above ground obstacles with sonar, right?
Yes, you're right.
So that gives a little more safety to the person using the cane.
Exactly.
And then there's a one hand free, which is a big advantage, of course. So you've got your phone in your pocket and you're using your cane.
Yeah, this is so important, Ned. It was around 3 years ago. I was in New York to give a speech at the United Nations, and while I was going my hotel, I was using my traditional white cane and holding it with my one hand. At the same time, I was holding my smartphone with the other, and I was pulling my luggage with these three fingers, and I was trying to manage all these things. And not surprisingly, in this chaos, I bumped into a pole. So that's why you can see some scars on my front head. So as you may know, visually impaired people are trained at the schools, at the blind organizations during the mobility trainings, how to use their empty hand. However, because of the holding the smartphone, we cannot apply these methods to protect ourselves, to increase.
Right, and you've also built in a custom navigation. So is that
Yes.
are you how custom is it? Are you building on top of other navigation systems, and how have you put that together?
Yeah, of course, we use Google infrastructure, but we built our own technology on top of it to provide more accurate navigation experience, because as you guess, visually impaired people need more accurate navigation commands. For example, it tells me turn right in 100 meters. Okay, I will turn right, but there should be two different streets on my right. So which one should I in 1 o'clock direction or 3 o'clock direction? So we provide clockwise accuracy, navigation experience for visually impaired, the technology that we developed.
I see. And so you also have an interface that a voice activated interface. Is that the predominant way that the user interacts with the cane and the app?
Yes, you're right. As I showed at the beginning, WeWALK Smart Cane has a voice menu, so visually impaired people navigate through by swiping on WeWALK's touchpad. So this is one way of interaction. At the same time, we have just released our voice assistant interaction as well. So it is beta right now, but we believe the potential of voice assistant interaction through WeWALK Smart Cane, and we will empower it day by day.
Right. Well, as there are more sensors and more data and more complex algorithms providing information to the end user, the interface gets more complicated. How do you convey this information in a timely way to the user? What have you learned along the way about that problem as now that your device is in use with many people?
So you're right. We need to provide more simplified user experience. And that's why we started with voice menu through WeWALK's touchpad, but we observed that there are many visually impaired people who interact with their smartphones through voice assistants. I have met many visually impaired people who even don't use VoiceOver. They are just using the Siri. So that's why I think voice assistant approach can make us our lives easier, as well as, of course, our users' lives easier, and can solve this too many data process.
Yeah, yeah. And what about haptic? Do you think haptic has a long-term role in interaction with the end user?
I think it will take place in our lives, but we will learn how to use it more appropriate way. And also, currently we alert our users through haptic feedback about obstacles, but we got some demands from our users. They want to hear sound as well. Why in these days we are working on adding sound as well, but it doesn't mean that haptic is not a suitable way to communicate with user, but I think we should find a better way of using it, maybe applying different patterns, or it can be more understandable for visually impaired user, and we can build and it will be so helpful for visually impaired still.
Great. And what is as you look to the future, on your product roadmap, what would you say, what is the most important thing that you're thinking about? What stands out as the really important technology or feature that your audience, that your customers really want?
So it's not difficult to guess. We keep developing our technology, and we are always push our boundaries, and we want to make WeWALK a personal hub for visually impaired people, where they can reach all sorts of information and technology about their mobility experience. And we feel ourselves so lucky because we are not alone in this journey. So WeWALK's AI studies was funded by Microsoft, because WeWALK is one of the Microsoft AI for accessibility startups. And also we are partnering with Imperial College London to our technology more, and we are making a research and development partnership with them. And we want to currently we are working on we are working on mobility training feature of WeWALK. So as you know, visually impaired people are trained how to use white cane, but unfortunately there is no follow-up mechanism. So with WeWALK's mobility training feature, teachers will have a chance to follow their students' mobility improvement. And this is the project, this is the technology that we are building together with Microsoft right now.
So that you've mentioned that to me in the past. That's a very impressive system, because trainers can then see the data even when the trainer is not with them. So that would be
exactly
a pretty remarkable advance. So how many people are on the team right now?
So we are a team of 23, and we are headquartered at London, UK, and we have subsidiaries in Turkey and the USA as well.
Great. And the price of the cane?
So it costs $600 currently.
Okay.
And it's available, and so far we reached thousands of users in 59 different countries.
Great, great. Well, congratulations on your success so far.
Yeah, thank you.
And let's turn to Louis-Philippe Massé and talk about the Stellar Trek. So Stellar Trek's a very ambitious device because it's coming in on the heels of another very successful device, which is the Trekker. Is that right, Louis-Philippe?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we have entered that the navigation device market for in the assistive technology field since with our first device, and it was pretty successful. So of course we have big shoes to fit, but we're pretty confident that this new model will be pretty well received and pretty useful with the new features we will introduce.
Right. I mean, the ambition level is really pretty stunning because in the words of your colleagues, it's going to provide tools at every step of our users' everyday lives. That's a huge step up from where Trekker is, right? Trekker had a more limited feature set.
Exactly. Before we were kind of, when somebody wanted to go from point A to point B, well, point B had to be on the sidewalk.
Right.
So now we want the point B to be really at your friend's house or the restaurant you're meeting someone or somewhere else. So that's why we kind of introduce what we called not just navigation on a larger scale, like what Google Map or other application could give you. But first, of course, our micro level navigation is really optimized for blind users. But then after, the new features we'll introduce is use the camera that are on the device to actually locate the door that you actually want to go to. So if you're going to 12 St. John Avenue, when you are in front of that address, you take the device, which I have a prototype here, and the user just scan broadly the scene, and the device will locate potential doors and eventually identify if it's the correct door and give you precise micro navigation directions to go to get that door. So
that's really pretty remarkable. Can we see the device again? You gave us a
very
quick
short one. Don't freeze the image. That's a prototype that is used actually for drop test and durability test. So there's no logo on it.
But is that approximately the size of what the production model will look like?
It's exactly the same physical size, and there's the only difference is that it's going to have markings and logos and stuff like that.
Okay.
But you see, it's actually a little smaller than the usual smartphones. It's a little thicker because we have like much more powerful antennas that you could find on a smartphone. So that's why it's a little thicker there.
Well, that leads me to the tough question. You know, a lot of people are probably going to bring up, which is a separate piece of hardware. So in the case of WeWALK, we know the cane is separate and it's working with an app. In this case, the device is replicating a lot of what is in a smartphone, but doing other things as well. Could you explain, you know, the advantages of having a separate device and not using one of the platforms?
Well, there's many reasons to that. Of course, we recognize that there's pretty cool applications that could be you can get them for free on your phone, and it's working pretty well. But it's really going from really the whole journey that you want to go, and that's one thing. And also, just on the hardware side, we really have optimized the hardware. For example, the antennas are much more sensitive than the usual smartphone antennas to make sure that the GPS reception is always optimal. And we will also introduce in this model the L5 GPS reception. So there's the precision on the positioning that is sub-meter. So it's like 3 foot or better in terms of resolution. So this was not, it's still not so common on most smartphones you can get there. And of course, since AI, we have dedicated hardware to process the images and so on. And finally, one of the advantages is that there's physical buttons. So the interface is really made for people who are not necessarily comfortable touching on a smartphone screen. So it's all these combinations, and also built on our past experience, that we wanted this product to evolve gradually. So that's why we haven't embraced the all smartphone bandwagon so far.
I see. So I guess then there are usability questions, I mean, or advantages of developing your own hardware, the physical buttons, and then you can control the trickier electronic elements to sort of amplify the technology where you need to amplify it, better antennas, greater sensitivity.
Yeah.
Have you been advantaged by all the things that have happened in the technology marketplace in the past few years? The rise of very sophisticated GPU sensors and the presence of cloud compute and other things like that. Because in a way, it's a little, if sitting in Silicon Valley as I do, people would say, that's crazy. Why would you develop your own hardware when you've got an unbelievably sophisticated low-cost platform like a smartphone? What is your response to that?
Well, there's again many reasons. When everything is optimized to work together, it has many advantages. Smartphones are wonderful machines, and we're not competing against them. Actually, most of our users also have like Android or Apple-based iPhones, and they're quite happy about them. But a navigation device such as ours, it's really something our users really depend on. So for example, the battery life, it's something critical. If you're going to some area you don't know, you better be sure that if you're alone, that you can depend on something. So our battery is made to last much longer than smartphones batteries when it's in use. Because if you use a navigation application on most smartphone, well, the battery will deplete quite fast compared to our device. It's like more than a factor of 5 or 6. So because our device is really optimized for this. But in a broader sense, we actually benefit a lot from all the new technologies that appears in the last few years. Just the processing power that permits all these calculations. So that's why our first navigational device was actually a backpack. It was a big device, but now it fits in a small package, and it has enough power that it can localize and recognize the door that you want to go, and it guides you there. So that's
right. And to what extent are you drawing on cloud services, for instance, to provision the features? For instance, is your computer vision your own proprietary system, or are you using another platform?
So that's a pretty good question, and actually we're still debating this. We want the device to be self-sufficient. So we want to make sure that even if you're in an area where, for example, you couldn't get any Wi-Fi or cellular signal, you'll still be able to use the satellite to guide you to your destination and make the device, let the device. So we will have like offline capabilities even for the AI part. So we have like the neural computation that is based in part on the device. We're looking how to extend that, of course, because we believe that as we move in the future, internet connectivity is going to be pretty well universal, especially in urban areas. So we will benefit. We want actually to benefit from cloud computing and the capabilities that it adds to the device. So we don't see this as a competition. We have like the baseline. Completely offline calculation, but we'll add later on capabilities to use the cloud.
So that's probably going to be a pretty significant factor in the future. Letting the user know perhaps that some features may alter depending on whether it's on device or in cloud, that sort of thing? Does that come up as an issue?
Well, you can make the same parallel when you're using a smartphone and you go to a remote area, for example. You obviously will not have 5G reception if you go to the deepest countryside. So some of the fancy application you use a lot of data will not work very well there, or not at all. So it's kind of the same, you know. In urban area, in big cities, getting internet coverage it's not even a question. It's there, right? So of course we'll benefit when we have it, but when we don't, we'll still have enough capability in the device and the features that will guide the users safely to their destination.
Will the device require a subscription to a cellular network?
You can, at the beginning, since we will not introduce these cloud computing and service for now, it's actually something we're kind of debating internally. Some people are kind of allergic to these subscriptions, right? So we might have a subscription-based service or a one-time fee that will cover like the expected lifetime of the product. So we're actually debating this. So we're not very clear yet on the exact model for that.
Great. Well, I think it's terrific to hear you talk this way, because I think a lot of people aren't familiar with how difficult it is to figure out a product. You know, there are millions that you have to address, and trade-offs and all the rest. It's very
and I'm speaking for the others as well, is that since we have an additional layer of complexity, is that we need to design a device that is used by people who don't have sight. So it's even more. So that's why we have these challenges, but that's where we are the three of us. So
well, HumanWare has a great track record of building great products. So I'm sure that this will be interesting. What is well, I wanted to dive into one particular feature set, which sounds super attractive. My own wife is blind, and I know that the last few feet of her getting around, finding the right doorway or indoor navigation, you know, locating the stairwell, something like that, can be especially tricky and even a little dangerous. Your device is ambitious in that respect. It really wants to try to close that gap. How are you doing that?
Well, as I was explaining earlier, you know, when you're on the side of the street, you know you're not far away from that building, but you're still at risk of, you know, walking randomly into a car that is crossing, or bicycle path, or some rocks that could be on your path. So that's why we want to do, you know, I'm sure your wife know about the FFF, the final 40 feet, which is, there's also sometimes a fourth F letter that sticks into that acronym. But
yes,
anyway,
that's right.
And that's what we want to de-risk. There's always risk. We don't pretend that we will remove all the risk of blind pedestrian navigation, but we want to give additional help such that it will be a little like having a friend helping you going to those final 40 feet. So we will use the AI and the to eventually locate potential threats. And sometimes when you're on the sidewalk, the path to that door is not a straight line. So we will say, okay, you will have to go at 10 hours for 40 feet, and then turn to 2 hours, and so on, something like that. So that's the direction we're going. Sorry.
And the interface will be audio, voice.
It's audio. Now we have all the feedback from the device is audio. We have basic voice command, but since we will have a neural engine on the device, we'll also introduce natural language understanding such that you can use the device as a conversational agent to actually help you more like a personal assistant to go from your destination. So you will say to the device, we haven't given the device a cute name yet, but suppose you say, hey Ned, guide me to the door of the Starbucks, and then the assistant will go this way, but be careful, there's a telephone pole in the way, so things like that. Like if you were with a friend, you know.
Yeah, I'm used to that question. Domestic life. Great. And what is the price going to be on the device?
Final price has not been announced yet. It's going to be above $1,000 US dollar. We probably, as I was saying earlier, we're looking at different models in terms of if some of the service will be subscription based or not. So this will be refined in the next few months. We're planning to launch the product around April, May. So before that, of course, we'll have the final price. Sorry?
Next year.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. In April, May 2022. Yeah.
So that's very soon. That's exciting.
Yeah. We feel the pressure.
Sure. Is working on the development of this device?
We're pretty lucky at HumanWare. We have a nicely sized team of about 48 people in my R&D team. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of people who are working on different aspects of the product. The hardware, of course, but also the software, the AI, but also all the tests that needs to be done. And we're in that phase now. We're really on the testing phase to make sure that we catch all the potential issues, because especially for a navigation device, it's not like a recreational, like audio player or something like this.
Right.
We know that people will depend on this and their security will depend on this, at least in part. So we're really in the beta testing phase, big time now until the launch of the product.
Great. Well, thank you for that very deep and candid discussion about the development of Stellar. So let's turn to our final participant in this panel, Cagri Hakan Zaman, who straddles the world of academia and product development. That's a fun place to be, I've always thought. Could you tell us a little bit about Mediate, which is the company that you co-founded, and what you're trying to accomplish with Mediate and how it led you to create the Super LIDAR app family, Super LIDAR and LIDAR Sense, I think is the second one, right?
Yeah, the Super Sense. Sure. So the Mediate stemmed from my PhD research at MIT, which is on spatial experience and perception in humans and machines. I was always interested in how we humans make sense of the environment around us, how we find where we are, how we navigate, how we understand what's going on, to develop AI systems that can replicate our skills. And with that, I basically applied for an accelerator at MIT to build a company around these technologies. And the SuperSense, our first product, was sort of a natural ally for this type of task, because one of the communities that need the most spatial awareness is the visually impaired and blind community. So we devised the app SuperSense, and Mediate's vision is to enable people in both physical and digital spaces and empower them with new technologies using AI and augmented reality.
It's a remarkable app. It's also a crowded field. So, how do you, on the one hand, I can see it as a really cool proof of a concept in a lot of ways. But where do you think you can, that app or its successors down the road can stand out? I always got the impression that this is a step down a road, not necessarily the.
Yes, exactly. So we are following a strict user-centered design process with whatever we do. So the reason SuperSense ended up having some of the features that the competitors have is that our user base was demanding these to be included. So we wanted to listen to them and provide them while actually developing our technology and solutions using the SuperSense as our test bed, and which interestingly grew to be our major app, which was loved by people, and we kept improving it. But what we think is the most crucial thing in an app that is using a lot of technologies in a smartphone is to be a task-centered, not feature-centered, meaning it should try to provide a solution as fast as possible for the relevant problems that people have, instead of giving them a lot of toolkits. So relevant tasks and thinking about what is the most efficient and quickest solution to these tasks, so people will not spend a lot of time trying to find the solution. The reason, I think one of the sort of distinctive features of SuperSense is its UX. You can do anything only by 2 swipes or 2 taps. You will never spend time trying to find what are you looking for, like from a toolbox.
Right.
We spend a lot of time improving and designing our user experience so that it provides the most efficient way to find a solution to a problem.
Right, right. And that all makes a lot of sense. And as you look down the road, I was intrigued when you launched Super LIDAR, and I know that you have a big interest in AR. And across many of the panels at the show this year, and augmented reality is a big subject of conversation. We have a session on indoor navigation. The Seeing AI team at Microsoft is very interested in audio-based AR. How are you seeing that shape up? Because the launch of LIDAR sensors, of course, on the iPhone created all kinds of new possibilities, but it feels like the possibilities are so broad that it's hard to know where to begin. And you're a pioneer, so we'd love to learn how you see the LIDAR possibilities and what that app has taught you.
Of course. Our first feature in SuperSense was what we called then the object finder. It was first of its kind, if you believe. This technology was there for a while, but none of the other apps apparently didn't pick up the very key thing that people need to find things. So first thing we actually came up with was actually contextually a relevant task solver and object finder. So we started with the intent to provide a general task solver that is relevant for navigational and spatial awareness related tasks. So when the LiDAR came out, it was no-brainer for us because we have been developing all the technologies and all our R&D was focused on using computer vision technologies to parse the environment and find out information in it. So we quickly developed with what we already knew, the Super LiDAR, which is a prototype, which is being developed right now with the actual users. That gives a sense of what is around you by converting distances into sound and rhythms. That gives you a sense how big a room is and how you're oriented in it. And I think there's a big potential there, of course. This is early days for LiDAR. We are still using our computer vision, and down the road, I think technologies will blend vision and LiDAR technologies to create this type of solutions as well.
Yeah. As researcher in this field, when you look at where we are today and your close connection to the next generation of products, what's most exciting, or what do you wish you could get your hands on, I guess, in order to build something that you really know people would love?
I think this year is one of the sort of converging areas is digital twins and what people, fancifully say metaverse. The ability to collect and construct 3D environments and access the information in it. It requires a lot of infrastructure, but what we are headed towards and what I wish we had already is a system where people can freely navigate and independently navigate indoor and outdoor environments. Combine some of these technologies that are already there, like already developing great technologies, but what we are missing is an encompassing ecosystem that can provide and collect all this information for people. If a blind individual goes into any market or any shopping mall, and they don't need to really ask around where to go, just pull up their device and the information is already there, I think that will be the ideal solution in terms of navigation.
Is that about algorithms, or is it about data, or both?
both. The ability to efficiently encode and reconstruct environments, store maps, and then share them over the networks, and using smartphones or other devices to access that, localize a person indoors. These are all dependent both in the development of technologies and new algorithms and infrastructure. Especially the cloud computing will be one of the key elements in this.
Right, right, because this can't be on device, at least no device that we can imagine today.
Actually, we have our like R&D work that allows you to record. This is one of the upcoming features in SuperLIDAR suite that is going to be in SuperLIDAR that allows you to record any environment you are in, and then later on someone can just localize themselves in the same environment and follow the path you created for them. This could be used, for example, for an hotel to find, like, let people find a reception or other places. You need to just store it once locally, and then you can share that information with someone. But this is, again, just localized and isolated solutions. For it to be a general sort of task solver, we need more connected and cloud computing.
Well, the very, very cheerful and helpful staff at Trader Joe's would really welcome this, at least when my wife walks in the door. So a great advantage. That's really fascinating. And I promised at the start of the show, of this panel, that I'd let each of you ask one question of one of the other panelists or both panelists. And this has to be the lightning round because we're out of time, but why don't you go first? Ask that. Who has a question that they'd love to ask?
I can break the ice.
Okay, thank you.
Cagri, I'm very curious because I know that the indoor navigation is definitely something we look on our side, and I see actually potential good discussion we could have together for sure. Is it something that, for example, you would consider, because you were talking about multiple devices to get the multiple sensors and so on, and multiple environments. Is it something that your solution could be used on different platforms?
Exactly. One of the projects that is supported by Veteran Affairs this year, we call it Hakan. The idea is that we would like to create a standard for recording the indoor environments and adding information to them, and so that then interacting with that data can use it. This could be a device by HumanWare or a smart home device, a Google Assistant, anything. So we want to create we want to get started with this type of infrastructures, and we are definitely interested in getting many people to get onto the same ship so that we can actually grow an ecosystem on.
And it's really like crowdsourcing, right?
It's partly crowdsourcing, or once the standard is there, once the data collection method is there, I think there will be different methodologies. For us, we will make it for an individual to use for their own purposes now, to see actually it's an experiment too. What else can you add to that representation you have in your hand? We are thinking of building infrastructure. Maybe you want to be able to keep track of the changes in this physical infrastructure, so you can actually share this with contractors.
With others.
Yeah, with others. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cagri, any questions?
To ask, should I? Can
yes,
I ask?
Take it away. Take it away.
All right. I want to ask to Kürşat actually. Kürşat, this is an exciting word, and the first time I see in your hand how the device is. So you mentioned that people are learning how to use the white cane. Are there difficulties for people to adapt to WeWALK because of its differences? Or are you planning to let people adapt to WeWALK through a different type of orientation training as well?
So that's why we built our technology on top of standard white cane, because we want to provide a technology to visually impaired people which is similar to their standard tool, which is white cane. So that's why it doesn't need adaptation period, but since it's a technology, like every technology, it needs some adaptation period, and we currently provide special training sessions for our users, but also we are working on developing automated training session. So Smart Chain will introduce itself and will orient itself to the user and make their adaptation period much more easier.
Great, that's what I thought too, because when you mentioned the orientation mobility feature, I think this is one of the good directions to, instead of relying on what is there, you are innovating the way people interact with the, I think.
Kürşat, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Yes, I have one question to Louis. Actually, he showed the device, but since I am blind, I couldn't see
Sure,
it.
I'm sorry.
Could you describe it? Because the ergonomics is so important for visually impaired, because they will hold it in their hands while they are walking on the street. So I'm curious about its dimensions, weight, etc.
Sure, no problem. I will describe it. It's about the size of a smartphones if you look at the footprint, but it's a little thicker. I would say about 2 centimeter thick, maybe, or like in inches, it's a little less than an inch. It's kind of rounded, and in the front there is the keys that are used to enter directions or control the device, and so on. And it's a pretty intuitive interface. It's pretty similar to our older device. We didn't redefine everything because people were attached to that physical interface. There is on the underside of the device, two high-resolution cameras that are used for the object, the doors recognition, and eventually the object recognition as well. So that's why having your thumb controlling the keypads, if you put the device in front of you, if you scan left and right, that's where you will localize potential candidates of a door. So then through audio cues, it will say, we think we have located a door straight in front of you, for example. Then we take a higher resolution image to do the actual AI door recognition and also recognize the door number, the civic number of the door or the address. So I don't know if it's good enough in terms of description.
It helped me a lot. Thank you. So can I ask one more question, Nat? So
yes, please.
So which operating system do you use? Do you build your own operating system, or are you using standard?
This one is Linux based. It's a Linux based device. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And how many physical buttons are on the front of the device?
Well, 4, and there is in the middle this kind of joystick. It's not a joystick, but there's up, down, left, right arrows with a center push button too, and that is kind of the enter command. So it's pretty simple. There's not like thousands of buttons. It's but since I'm not blind, but I can easily, without looking at the device, you recognize the button because they have all different shapes and different locations, and they're all accessible from your thumb. So you don't need to have 2 fingers, 2 hands to operate the device. So they enter their destination, they put the device in their pocket because they have the cane, and when they arrive at close to their destination, then they pull it out to take the image of the door, to localize, to do those final 40 feet.
Right. Perfect. Well, thank you for that. Gentlemen, I wish we could talk for another hour because I have a long list of questions I'd like to ask. Absolutely fascinating, and I hope our audience appreciates the incredibly interesting and difficult work you do to create the next generation of fabulous assistive tech. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.